There you
Got it.
go. Okay. Hello, everyone. Trust you well and your families, depending on where you're listening from. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's such a privilege and honor to host this podcast again, Leadership Talk with Adegoke. And I have with me Jones Loflin. Jones is a formidable guy. He's added value in so many places and is here to do the same on this session of leadership and productivity. How are you, Jones?
I am fantastic, Adegoke. I love your energy and appreciate the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite topics today, which is, of course, is leadership and what does productivity look like for a leader?
Awesome, awesome. Now, tell us, who is Jones Laughlin?
Jones Loflin is an individual whose favorite word is flummoxed.
Yeah.
I enjoy growing stuff, and I love conversation over a good cup of decaf coffee. All right, that's the important stuff. Now, the less important stuff, I've been a speaker, trainer, and author for 30 years.
Wow.
My primary focus areas are leadership, work-life balance, and focus and productivity, which of course, today is kind of a blend of those things.
Mm,
I like to teach from models, metaphors. I find that that helps people to remember the content and the ideas more strategically. And so that's who I am.
awesome, awesome. Good one. Now, what is leadership to you? What is leadership?
Mhm. Mhm. Leadership to me, in its simplest form, is growing other people. I mean, I'll just it's now I think it involves casting vision. I
Okay.
think it involves helping people to develop themselves or become more effective. But at the end of the day, I think leadership is all about growing. It's growing yourself, growing your team, and growing your business or growing the organization that you're a part of. That's where I would start with my definition of leadership.
Awesome. I belong to the Maxwell team, and
Mm,
John will say that everything rises and falls on leadership.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Awesome.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
what is productivity?
You know, I love that question because to me it reminds me, Adegoke, when people say, "Give me a Kleenex," and what
Okay.
they really mean is, "Give me a tissue."
Yeah.
And Kleenex is a brand name, so I feel the same way when people talk about productivity.
Yeah.
When I think of productivity in its purest sense, productivity is creating widgets. It's producing stuff, and I think for me, productivity, especially from a leadership standpoint, it's about producing impact,
Hmm.
producing growth,
Hmm.
producing results, which is different if you are an individual within an organization versus if you're in a leader. So, to me, your question originally was, what is productivity? I think it's producing something. I just think that something is different for leaders.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, where's the connect between leadership and productivity? Where did they meet?
Yeah, yeah, great question. Going back to leadership, leadership is about growing yourself, your team, the business.
Yeah.
And then productivity is about producing results. I think the intersection is, what are you producing? What are you developing in the work that you do as a leader?
All
Are you
right.
developing more confident and competent team members? Are you developing a vision that other people are connected to and get excited about?
Hmm.
And are you producing a better version of yourself? Are you growing yourself so you can be more effective for your team
Hmm.
in what their needs are?
Awesome. Now, for you, what has been your experience concerning productivity? I mean, as a leader, you don't need to share your personal experience, but do
Sure.
you have examples of leaders that have been very productive, or
Yeah.
you just want to use yourself as an
Let's
example?
let's go the let's go the other way first. The leaders that aren't productive. That one's almost easier because I work with a lot of first-time leaders and leaders who are fairly new in their position. And one of the things that I find so often, Adegoke, is that they still want to focus on the widget producing side of their job, their technical skills. They just that's where they're comfortable.
Okay.
And so I think now, to answer your question, the leaders that I find who are, producing the best results are the ones who are focusing on the people side of their work. And their priority is developing other people. Their priority is not, okay, I've got 15 things on my checklist today, and let me see if I can get them all done. Then if I have time, I'll think about my people. No, it's just the reverse of that. It's thinking about, how do I develop my people? How do I make that a priority? And yeah, you're going to have some administrative things to do that involve just you, but are you prioritizing those things that are going to develop that team that you're leading?
Awesome. That's a good answer. Now, I just want to, I mean, I know that John talks about five levels of leadership, and he talks about position, permission, production, people development, and the pinnacle. And
Hmm.
for me, I'm so excited about production. Where that's where you really bring in results. Can you
Hmm.
speak to that?
Sure. Um, let me share with you. I mentioned about I teach from models. My my model of leadership is gardening, leading with a gardener's mindset.
Wow.
And so when you talk about producing, then for me, it's like a gardener walking into a garden and going, okay, you know, what plants, think about people as plants,
Yeah.
what plants are growing well today? Which ones look like they're thriving? Which ones are growing at a healthy rate? Which plants am I looking at that I'm going, they look like they need some support,
Okay.
or they're not thriving, in that way. So how can I help them as the gardener, as the leader, to produce those results I know they're capable of producing? And so that could be training, mentoring, coaching, investing more time in them, getting them the resources they need. But I think it looks different for every team member,
Yeah.
just like in gardening, you don't grow tomatoes and cucumbers, the same way.
Hmm. Okay, so um, that's a good one. Now, I just want you to, I know you mentioned mentoring, coaching, and so on.
Mhm.
Can you just speak to, just mention three things that you need to do as a leader to become productive?
Three things as a leader to become productive. Oh, first one, I think it has to be leaders have to prioritize.
Okay.
They have to really invest the time to think about where they want their time and energy to be spent. Because
Okay.
as you know from your experience in coaching and helping others, it's real easy just to get distracted by the urgent, the dumpster fires, those things.
Hmm.
So prioritizing, I think, is critical for leaders. The
Okay.
second thing is I think it's important for leaders as it relates to this is the whole idea of, it's going to sound weird, but being unavailable from time to time,
Hmm.
being willing to not be all things to all people all the time.
Yeah.
Leaders have to have those moments where they are, investing in themselves, focusing, being strategic. And that's not always done in the context with a team. Sometimes they just need to, be alone and to do that. I think the third thing, leaders need to be the ones who are encouraging and cheering others on. Think about a gardener mindset. Gardeners are always looking for what's growing, what's
Hmm.
changing, what's improving, and leaders need to do that. Too many leaders spend their time looking for what's wrong instead of celebrating what's going right.
Awesome. Awesome. Fantastic. Now, a follow-up question
Mhm.
is, now, if you want to speak to that leader right now that is struggling with being productive, what would you like just to advise, generally, what would you like to say to
Mhm.
that leader that is plateaued, that is no longer productive?
Mm. First thing I would say to that leader is to stop. It
Okay.
seems counterintuitive because, oh, Jones, I've got so much that's not happening. But you can't make a course correction
Mm.
when you're moving. I think
Mm.
you have to stop and evaluate.
All right.
In fact, I would ask them the question, in your drive to get everything done as a leader, what's not getting done?
Hmm.
And be specific. And for
Right.
some of them, it may be talent development. Some of them, for some people, it may be, really developing a vision that others buy into. But I would encourage them to stop and ask themselves that question. In your drive to get it on, what's not getting done or getting done well? And then what would it look like if you were doing that well?
Hmm.
Because I think they've got to get specific about what it is they need to be doing differently, and then we can back that into new routines
Hmm.
or schedules to help them accomplish it.
Awesome. Awesome. I listened to a podcast on John's, Maxwell's
Hmm.
executive leadership. And, one of the things he spoke about was, having, that vision, clarity.
Mm,
Because sometimes, that vision, you need to, do like you said, stop, and there needs to be a reset,
mm,
uh, all over the world right now. Now Trump is coming and he has a different vision from Biden. And even, he wants to be productive as a leader and is looking at, should I use tariffs? Should I use negotiation? Should I use, and some leaders, you know, they might have a great vision, but where does negotiation come in, even for a leader? When if you want to be productive,
mm.
if you want to negotiate your way, into making sure that your vision comes. How do you?
Gotcha. Sure. Thank you. Yeah. Um, when I hear you talk about negotiation, I think part of my background, you talked about your background with John Maxwell. Part of my background is working with Dr. Spencer Johnson, who wrote the
Okay,
book Who Moved My Cheese about
awesome,
change several years ago. And
fantastic.
one of the things that Dr. Johnson talked about that is just so stuck with me, and I use a variation of it in my own training. He said, you have to give people a sensible vision.
Hmm,
And that means it has to make sense to them. And I think for any leader who just feels like their vision isn't connecting with people, you aren't seeing people get excited about it, is that ask yourself, does it make sense to them? And I don't mean in sense to them if they can understand it, but does it get them excited? Does it give them a
hmm.
picture?
Yeah.
Aristotle said thousands of years ago, the soul never thinks without a picture. And so if you're casting vision, does your vision connect because what they can see or hear or touch, if that vision were accomplished, does that get them excited?
Hmm,
And if not, then you need to work on the vision more or be able to explain it in such a simple, visual way that people go, okay, yeah, I see where you're going. I like that because it
hmm.
connects with what's important to me.
Awesome. John, I like to refer to John because John C. Maxwell is my mentor and I
Hmm.
read a lot of his books. There's a model that we're licensed to teach. It's called Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. You know,
Mm.
yeah, and it's not just about communicating but connecting. So
Oh,
just I agree with what you just said. Now, as we begin to wrap up,
mm.
I just want to celebrate you. If
Oh,
you are listening, just listening, this is Leadership Talk with Adegoke, and with me on this session, I have with me Jones Loflin, a remarkable gentleman, adds so much value, unlocked potential of leaders, and thank you for coming on the podcast. I just want to celebrate you and thank you for this and your depth in terms of leadership is really remarkable. I use the word remarkable intentionally. Thank you.
well.
Now, as we wrap up, um, if there is one thing that you like to be remembered for as a leader, in terms of productivity, what is that one thing?
Hmm. Great question. Um, I think it has to go back, for me anyway, it
Yeah,
would go back to that I intentionally invested time in growing the people around me.
awesome.
People are hungry to grow. And as a leader, if I am producing people who are more capable of doing their job and accomplishing what's important to them, then I feel like I am successful as a leader.
Wow, 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 wow. Awesome. So I'm hearing that, you are also legacy focused as well. You want to make sure that you leave, something behind. in other people,
Right.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, if we want to reach out, if we want to connect
Sure.
with Jones Loflin, how do we reach you? Do you have platforms?
Absolutely, I do. Thanks for asking. One of the places that people worldwide find me, of course, is on LinkedIn. And you can just type in Jones Laughlin, and I'd love for them to connect with me, follow me. I am putting out content there every day on leadership, time management. They can go to my website, joneslaughlin.com, and I have a number of resources and information there that help them get to know me better. More than anything else, Adegoke, I know you're going to put this in some of your show notes, just having to reach out to me by email. I love the opportunities to connect with folks and say, hey, what's going on in your world? What's your leadership challenge? And be able to see if I can find ways to help them. Then, of course, you can also find me on YouTube and all the usual places.
Awesome, awesome. This has been amazing, Jones. I mean, I'm so glad that we had this opportunity to record this podcast, and I know that listeners all over the world will benefit from this. This is really good stuff. And so
Well,
once
thank
again, I've
you.
had the privilege of having a session on leadership and productivity with Jones Laughlin. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I really appreciate this.